Today we're going to talk about why my best self isn't actually my best self at all. We need to stop accepting the world as it is packaged for us. So we must become free-thinking individuals. And the cost of not doing this is too high. The cost of accepting the premises of every interaction we have with another person is total domination. And if we passively accept the conditions of every other person's perspective, the walls of our souls will become infested with the anxiety of people-pleasing. And as I gain more of a platform, I see more and more people commenting on my videos, on my Facebook, and on my Twitter, and yada, yada, yada. And one comment stuck out to me recently. A middle-aged pastor commented on one of my videos in which I was calling men to reclaim a traditional vision for masculinity. And in his comment, he called me a poser. And he meant it as a dig against me. But the truth is, I take that as a compliment. So when we think of posers, we usually think of high school kids who dress like they skateboard, but they don't really skateboard, and that kid's a poser, right? And that's etymologically and morphologically what the word ought to mean, but more commonly it refers to something a little bit different, and the distinction is a matter of nuance. Usually, and the way that we use it refers more so to skateboarders who seek to achieve an ideal, but haven't actually arrived yet. So the word poser is meant to highlight the disparity between a person's ideal and their real-time progress in achieving that ideal. So it indicates the failure of a person to reach the life that they claim that they live. Well, what is the opposite of being a poser? Well, the opposite of being a poser, excuse this colloquialism, but the opposite of being a poser is being legit. And in a particular discipline or domain, when someone says that guy's legit, what we mean by that is we mean that he has achieved mastery over his domain. It means he is legitimately and deftly and credibly supreme at executing a domain's core tasks. It means that he takes his training seriously. It means that he is worthy of emulation by other men. It means that his methodology for achieving mastery is sound. It means that he is reputable among other masters. On the spectrum of poser to legit, I want to be a poser. Why? Several reasons. First, I always want to have an ideal that is beyond where I am. If I've attained my ideal, then my ideal isn't high enough. I want to be on the crest of pushing myself and realistic enough to measurably achieve, yet beyond where I am. I always want to be aiming higher than where I currently am. And that requires that I be willing to step into arenas in which I don't actually fit because I'm not actually good enough to be there. I will be at my best. I will have an ideal that requires me to wear the clothes of a particular domain that reflect my aim rather than my present state, rather than my present competencies. And the disparity between my ideal and my real, which the term poser signifies, is that disparity. That ought to be celebrated and measured and optimized for progress. And I always want to keep closing the gap between my goal and myself. But as soon as I achieve that goal, as soon as I erase that disparity through progress, I want to set another goal. And if you ever let yourself remain satisfied, you will stop moving. And if you stop moving, you will die. So I want to be a poser because I want to live and because I want to keep a disparity between myself and my ideal that calls me to overcome that disparity and therefore keeps me in motion existentially and psychologically and even physically as a human being. Second, as soon as you think of yourself as legit, you become blind to your weaknesses. You become infatuated with considering yourself as a master, and you become blind to areas of self-improvement. You become dependent on coddling your ego. This is a place of weakness. It is the dark side of not having an ideal. The only alternative to not being a poser is death and darkness and stagnation. Third, and this gets sort of to the heart of what it actually means to be a poser. Being a poser forces you not to care about other people's opinions because you'll get made fun of. Now, this is where critics will enter and say, well, you're conceiving of this whole poser concept kind of wrong, right? So you call someone a poser who postures as legit. That's what a poser really means. Someone who pretends to be legit, but actually isn't a master. Okay, but that's what it means to be a poser, really, and you're not really using it correct, Paul. So, fair enough. Except, herein also lies the paradox of poserism, which is that when you are striving to fit into an ideal, which you have not yet achieved, People from the outside will not be able to tell the difference between someone who is genuinely striving for competence that is beyond their current status and someone who is merely fabricating the optics or appearance of competence. Only you will know whether the poser label points to a quality of self-improvement or ego inflation. There is one minor exception to this. If someone seems to care more about the visual tokens which represent competency than competency itself, then I don't consider them a poser, because someone who allows themselves to care more about improving their public image than improving their actual skill sets suffers from a need for approval that manifests itself in every area of their lives. So it's not just that they're trying to be a poser in one area, it's that they are trying to protect themselves from a sense of insufficiency, which is a deeper problem than a negative aspect of being a poser. And I see this a lot in the world of theology, right? Guys, when you have conversations with them, especially on Twitter, but even in person, guys will want to kind of name drop theologians that they don't really understand, and they will use these references as a way to defer the discussion of the actual ideas. And then for these guys, theology becomes a discipline that primarily talks about the people who talk about ideas rather than a discussion about the ideas themselves. And guys who do theology in this way have the same habit in other areas of their lives. They want to be perceived as an expert without actually doing the groundwork. These are the guys who show up on the first day of class with a tweed coat and a $1,000 leather bag and all the books bought, right? But when it actually comes to talking the talk, they can't grind it out in a conversation, right? You talk to them and you go deep into the ideas and they have a blank look on their faces, right? So they end up looking like a little girl putting on makeup for the first time. Like, is this how you do it? Is this what it looks like to be competent? And it's cute, right? But it's not competent, right? It's not actually competent. And another version of this would be someone who hears a name that is dropped, right? So you're in a conversation and somebody drops a name, and then you stop the conversation and you say, you know what? I've actually never heard of John Calvin. Who is that? What idea of theirs are we talking about, right? And then you're a poser because you're trying to do theology. You're in a conversation. You're trying to think theologically. And they said, you never heard of John Calvin? You must be a poser, bro. Well, then you see the person who stops the conversation and risks or actually displays the fact that they are a poser, right? That person will learn, and they therefore ascend 1 degree toward being legit. And then that person would utilize new information that he learns about Calvin or whoever throughout the rest of the conversation. And then perhaps in another conversation, he will bring up Calvin, still without having researched or read Calvin for himself, but will have remembered from that conversation a category that he learned. So even in that second conversation, he appears to know something that he doesn't really know. And in this case, that's not actually a bad thing because he's trying to learn. He cares about competencies more than optics. He cares about the skills themselves rather than the tokens which display the success of skills. Okay? There's a very big difference between that. And he's putting it all together as excellently as possible and as quickly as possible. So the person who learns about something and is not actually credible, but attempts to go through the motions of credibility. This person poses or postures as if he knows something he doesn't in order to practice knowing it for the future, which he intends to do. And this is good because it actually carries you along into competency. These are actually motions which carry you along into doing something right, into gaining a skill. And the import of all this for self-improvement is simple. Strive for more. Always strive for more. If you see yourself as legit and you have no ideals which put you out of your comfort zone so that you don't feel insecure and incompetent in your domain, your ideal is not high enough. People should be calling you a poser. If you are actually trying to do something that's hard for you and that forces you to display an aspect of your incompetencies in a certain domain, you will look like a poser. They'll say you're trying too hard. They'll point out how you haven't achieved your ideal. They'll call you a hypocrite. Good. Your actions should never perfectly conform to your ideal. If they do, it's not high enough. Your ideal should be so high that you need to learn how to close and accommodate that disparity with a doctrine of forgiveness and patience. Be a poser. Preach what you struggle to put into practice. Practice what you struggle to put into practice. You will fail. But if you keep your ideal high enough that it requires you to be better than you are to fulfill it, and you keep it achievable enough that it remains a true and realistic motivator, then you will ascend the hierarchy of competence. You will become more masterful. It is by making yourself a poser and reaching beyond your grasp that others will despise you. right? It's signing up for the bodybuilding competition, knowing that when you tell your friend, oh, I'm signing up for a bodybuilding competition, they're going to look at you like, bro, you don't have that much, you're not in good enough shape to sign up for a bodybuilding competition. Yeah, I know. That's the point. And people will despise you for being a poser, because they will despise you because they know they should be doing the same thing. They recognize that they are not holding themselves to a higher standard, and they know that by doing this, they are looking death in the face and they are shoving it down. They're shoving it down, and they will hate you for not shoving it down. They will despise you. They know they should be striving for something higher, something ideal like you are. They know what you're doing, and they hate you for trying to be better than you are now, because the very act of self-improvement is a critique of the lazy and the lethargic and the visionless, which is why people who refuse to lose weight, who refuse to achieve their fitness goals, well, they just call people who achieve their fitness goals, they just call them, they have body image issues, and they try to pathologize and construe in a negative light people who actually improve themselves. Oh, you should just accept yourself as you are. No, you shouldn't. You should let insecurity drive you. You should let incompetency embarrass you, and you should be pushed along into skill. And in so doing, you will become competent. In so doing, you will become masterful. In being willing to be a poser, you will come to fit the new situation. You will come to fit in the domain in which you were previously incompetent. Be a poser. It is the optimal pathway to being legit.